This is Marissa M. Skow, and I am going to be reading Chapter 1 from my book, The Pixie Plane of Existence. So, without further ado, Chapter 1, Rows of Houses Dressed in White. Dasakata crept through the grass on all fours, staying as low to the ground as she could. She heard the conversations of the others, and nobody called out after her. When she was sure that they had not noticed her absence, she bounded upward. Climbing high above the treetops was no small task. It was akin to distance running and took great effort. When she finally saw the clearing of the cornfield, she knew she wasn't far from her secret place, away from the prying eyes and strict codes of her society. It was too bad that Cat hated living here. Warden appeared to be a perfect, pristine little town filled with a close-knit community. However, as we all know, looks can be deceiving. Her parents had assured her that she would love it when they'd moved here 6 months ago. That was a huge error in judgment on their part. They lived on a street where every single house was at least 100 years old, and every single one painted white. Theirs was the smallest and simplest on the block, sandwiched between two larger homes with stained glass windows and massive front porches. The yards on her block were meticulously kept, and the entire town was a charming throwback to a different era. About a half-mile from the row of Victorian white houses was the edge of the wood. Her mother hadn't let her venture there yet. She wasn't allowed to go because they'd heard stories of kids from her neighborhood partying and drinking and other mischief. Katerina, or Kat for short, was just 13, and because she was an only child, her parents were slightly overprotective. So the girl who lived on the lane with white houses all in a row spent her days wondering what went on in the Oak Ridge woods and wishing she could go. Today was no different. It was almost the end of summer. You could smell the change in the air. A delicate crispness whispered autumn was near. She was daydreaming on her swing under the willow, longing for something to do. Kat sulked at her dull, joyless existence as a teen of Warden, of course completely oblivious to the fact that she was the object of an obsession. High above, Dasakata gazed down from the fort she'd made for herself. It was tucked up nearly halfway and had once been a nest. Now it included a couch of her very own made from an old checkbook box filled with housing insulation that she'd found. It was the perfect respite from the intricate hierarchy she was part of at the Domak Vilava. It was interesting to watch the human interaction. She didn't understand why they'd been banished. A pang of sadness darkened her chest light. Her kind was now forever cast as a myth when they'd once enjoyed robust friendship with the humans. Long before her life cycle, of course. Dasakata peered down, craning her neck to hear the strange language that fell from their lips. She understood a few words here and there, her miyam having once been a pasdara, or translator. Jenna lived in the house on the corner, and she usually ignored Kat. She was only 3 years older, but that was an eternity, according to her mother. Like so many times in the past, she expected Jenna to treat her like a ghost as she passed on her way to the woods, probably to do exciting and wonderful things. That thought made her jealous, and Kat's nose scrunched up. Jenna noticed the funny-faced baby, bored and angst-filled, and decided to bestow some mercy. She was in a rare good mood. "Hey there, Kat," she drawled. "What you doing today? Playing Barbies?" She sneered as she stopped at the white picket fence, her knobby elbows poking out from her strange black shawl that looked straight out of 1894. She rested her head on her forearms and smiled. Jenna had curly auburn hair with strips of faded green in it, the effects of a failed attempt of a home dye job. Her amber eyes twinkled playfully as her mouth twisted into a mocking smile. She reminded Kat of an owl, which made her stomach knot in distrust. Jenna Linden exclusively wore black clothing, even on muggy days like today. Kat had always envied her spark of eccentricity. She was the only person at school not dressed like a JCPenney catalog model. "No, I'm not playing Barbies," Kat snapped back defensively, as if she were still interested in such a thing. Well, maybe a little, but she would never admit it, not in a million years. "I'm taking a break from helping my mom with chores around the house." Kat twirled her black hair nervously and didn't meet the eyes of Jenna. Upperclassmen didn't usually engage their younger counterparts. "Well, either way, you look really bored. You could come with me to the Oak Ridge Woods," Jenna slyly suggested. "We have a fort there. Not like a tree house or anything, but a cool clubhouse made out of mud and sticks. You should come because Winnie says we're looking for—" She stopped short before finishing. "Hi, Mrs. Stoneheart," she called out and gave a friendly wave. Kat turned around to see her mother coming up the back walk carrying fresh carrots and onions. Putting her garden-gloved hand up to her brow to block the sun, she replied, "Hi, Jenna. How is your mother doing? Better, I hope." Jenna shrugged. "The doctors say she's doing better." Avoiding eye contact, she shuffled the gravel beneath her foot. It was obvious that she didn't want to talk about it. Kat could see the sadness in her eyes, something they both had in common. Kat belonged at home in her old city with both her mom and her dad. "Mom, can I go with Jenna just for a little bit? She has a fort she wants to show me. Please, pretty, please." Her mother had a sullen face. She glanced at Jenna and then back at Kat. Taking a deep sigh, she finally relented. "Well, I suppose for an hour wouldn't hurt. You need to be back in time for supper. Don't make me come find you because I will." Kat had never hung out with Jenna before. Even though they lived in the same small town of Warden and lived on the same block, Kat hadn't made any friends since moving here. No thanks to her mother, who barely let her out of her sight. She was excited and nervous as she headed out the front gate. They walked for about a half a block before Kat started prattling on nervously. "So why do you always wear that black shawl thingy everywhere? Aren't you hot?" Jenna's amber eyes turned a little hostile and she caught Kat's gaze and her words smoldered. "I swear it because—" Jenna's amber eyes turned a little hostile. She caught Kat's gaze and her eyes smoldered. "I wear it because I like it. Besides, I've never had any problem with being who I am." Kat's face burnt hot in embarrassment. She hadn't meant to poke a sore spot with the only girl in the neighborhood who actually took an interest in her. "Well, I think it looks good on you. I just wonder where you got it. Not much like that in the mall." Kat quickly backtracked. Jenna snorted. "Who wants to look like they shop at the mall?" Well, she obviously had that covered. Her style was a cross between Stevie Nicks and Shirley Manson. Unfortunately, Kat did look like she shopped at the mall. She was wearing warm blue jeans, tennis shoes, and a t-shirt ensemble that didn't impress Jenna at all. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and her sage eyes matched the green stripes on her shirt. The mysterious Jenna Linden wasn't budging on any of her secrets, and Kat felt lucky that she'd been invited to tag along. Instead of trying to make awkward conversation, she walked a little bit behind and drifted off into her imagination, thinking about what the clubhouse looked like. Finally, the girls were at the road's end. The cul-de-sac only had one house on the left, and it was at least 200 feet back. The rest was surrounded by a cornfield that separated them from the entrance to the woods. "Old Man Yager hates it when we walk through his corn, so we gotta go quickly. There's a path into the woods to your right. Just keep up, okay?" Jenna instructed. She slipped into the high corn stalks and instinctively knew where to turn. They came out just ahead of a narrow dirt path and emerged into dense woods. The trees were adorned with full green leaves, and the tree frogs were singing so loud it was like hearing rock and roll. A crow called a warning to the others, and several little animals scuttled away upon their entrance. The earth smelled moist and dank, sort of like a pungent hippie. Kat felt a shiver of excitement wick up her spine. She was finally here. The place she'd been longing to explore since she and her mother had moved here last winter. She pushed the unhappy thoughts of the move out of her head and instead looked around at the ethereal beauty of the forest. A sly smile warmed Jenna's face. It's pretty cool, huh? I have so much to show you. I'll never forget my first time coming here, Jenna said dreamily. Kat was careful to follow closely behind as they walked the uneven path together. It weaved through the woods and then split into several deer trails that were not as well worn. We go this way, said Jenna, pointing left. The sunlight fell through the trees in an eerie greenish light. It seemed that it was somehow darker down that path. Kat was drawn to the path on the right. What's this way? She questioned. I hear water. Yeah, that leads to the creek. Nothing to see, really. There's an old bridge that is falling apart. Once you get to the other side, the path kind of trails off. Just a stupid field with some wildflowers, Jenna informed her. They went the direction of the dense trees and darkened path. The sunlight streamed down on the other trail like golden sheets from heaven, and Kat couldn't figure out why the shadows seemed to jump and the wind went still when she followed her trusted guide. She looked longingly over her shoulder, but soon caught up to Jenna. So, where are we going anyway? This is a cool place, she observed, but I feel like we've been walking forever. My mom says I have to be back for supper. Continuing toward their unknown destination made the hair on her arm stand on end. Her mom had always taught her to trust her instincts, but today she ignored them in favor of friendship. Kat played with her loose black hair to calm her nerves, anxiously pulling it back into a ponytail, then deciding on a braid since she didn't have a rubber band. Your mommy says you have to be home by supper, Jenna mimicked lightheartedly. Kat, sweetie, have some guts, will ya? I am letting you hang out with me. We're almost there, so just relax. Kat didn't know what to say to that, so she just kept going. Where was there to go anyway? She wasn't sure she could make it out of these woods alone. Jenna cut a hard right into a thick patch of high grass. There wasn't a trail, just gnarled trees and random vegetation. Jenna became friendly again, blathering on about random things. She picked up a piece of trash from the ground, crumpled it in her hands angrily, and then stuffed it into the back pocket of her jeans. I find all of this crap out here. Once I found a leather jacket, but it had been all cut up. I was hoping to salvage it. I can't believe the things people dump here, Jenna lamented. Finally, the girls arrived at some bluffs covered in vines. It appeared to her that the only way to pass was to climb up a rock wall. Where do we go from here? Kat was confused. Jenna looked over her shoulder at Kat, bit her lip, and raised her eyebrows. She was obviously enjoying creating a moment of suspense for her young cohort. We go through here. You have to see what's on the other side. She pulled aside a curtain of vines that led into a dark cave. However, it wasn't too long. Kat could see light on the other side of the tunnel. What a peculiar thing. She'd never expected that caves could be this shallow. She estimated it was about 50 feet to the other side. She followed as Jenna trudged in, unafraid. Kat ignored proper space bubble rules and moved ever closer to Jenna, stepping on the heels of her shoes. Would you watch it? Jenna exclaimed in annoyance. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I want to get out of this cave. It's giving me the willies. Are there bats and bugs and stuff in here? Jenna was amused. She clicked her tongue at Kat. Well, I will tell you that this place is special. It's majestic. Later, Kat would learn that majestic was one of Jenna's favorite words, and she used it all the time. Ahead, thin lines of light streamed through curtains of vines. It occurred to Kat that they were surrounded by bluffs, like they were in the center of a stone donut. The only way in or out was through the shallow cavern. When her eyes adjusted to the light again, Kat gasped at the beauty. There were smatterings of raspberry bushes growing wildly around the edges of the bluffs, which were amazing hues of gray, brown, and rust. In the very center was a slab of smooth gray stone with chalk markings on it. The moss that grew around it was an intense chartreuse green, similar to glow sticks. Encircling the smooth slab was an array of larger stones with flat tops, 13 to be exact. Jenna sat down on one, and she took a deep breath in, closed her eyes, and tilted her back towards the sun. Then she gracefully raised her arms up above her head, gave her shoulders a little shimmy, and shook out her hair. Isn't it just amazing? This is what I have been wanting to show you. I can tell that there's something majestic about you. It's rad that you didn't chicken out on the way here. Really? She questioned, with a hint of suspicion in her voice. Why was Jenna being so nice all of a sudden? Kat's mind whirled with imagined ulterior motives until she shook herself out of it and regained her manners. Well, I'm glad to be here. It's awesome. Thanks for showing it to me, she replied. Yo! An unfamiliar voice called out, startling them both. Just then, another girl waded through the vines. She was chubby with thick dishwater blonde hair and gray eyes. Her cheeks were rosy from walking, and she huffed wildly, obviously out of breath. Hey, Winnie, Jenna said casually. This is the new girl that lives down the street from me. Her name is Katerina Stoneheart. Her mom actually let her out of the yard today. Winnie looked Kat up and down, smirked, then plopped herself onto a rock. She looks like a baby. I told you we need another woman to make the start of a circle. Kat didn't know what they were talking about. She wanted to know why Jenna had brought her here, but she could tell she was already late for supper. The sun was slowly going down and casting a buttery yellow light on the bluffs. Winnie, you know a lot about this place, right? So what is it? She asked, ignoring the obvious dig Winnie had launched at her moments earlier. Jenna had brought her into the fold, sharing their secret place. Getting along with this pudgy tyrant was in her best interest. Well, Winnie started, proud that she'd been asked, the legend says that this place used to be a shrine of some sort for the people that lived here a really, really long time ago, like hundreds of years. Some say they were witches. I can't find much information on it at the library, but I found this at the bookstore. She held up a paperback with a red and white candle on the cover. It was aptly named The Red and the White Candle. We started dabbling. Kat didn't like what she was hearing. A shrine? She was starting to feel really uneasy. Jenna stood up from the rock and walked over to Kat, who was standing at the edge of the slab. Are you scared of witches, kitty cat? Jenna mocked as she held out her arms so her shawl draped, making her look like a bat. Her voice softened as she explained. They aren't like the ones that have pointy hats and ride brooms. The ladies that used to circle here were powerful forces of nature. They just help people out, kind of like nurses, alchemy and whatnot. Kat didn't know any other type of witch, but she took Jenna's word for it. After all, Halloween was all about pretend. Witches with pointy hats and black cats making spooky potions to turn kids into frogs did sound pretty unlikely. You can come back here at any time, said Winnie, as long as you keep it a secret and as long as you're our third. What's a third? Kat asked, baffled. According to numerology, 3 is the number of divine intervention. Nikola Tesla tells us if you understand 3, 6, and 9, you'll be given a glimpse into the secrets of the universe. So basically, we need a third person to help us work the craft, Jenna explained. Who's Nikola Tesla? Jenna lowered herself a couple inches so she was looking directly into Kat's eyes. Placing her hands onto her shoulders, she gently shook her while alluding to a conspiracy. He's smarter than Einstein, but school will never ever teach you about him. Wouldn't want to cross the Rockefellers. Kat really didn't have any desire to dabble in witchcraft or hear conspiracy theories. She just wanted to go home. Hanging out with these older girls wasn't what she thought it was going to be. She realized too late that she'd been tricked by Jenna about the clubhouse. There wasn't one, just some weird secret society that Winnie and Jenna had started. It wasn't an ideal, but she decided that it was better than being alone. Okay, I'm in, Kat shrugged. As long as we don't do weird stuff like kill animals or eat insects. Her palms were clammy, so she folded her arms, trying to wipe them on her shirt without them noticing. Her face hot with embarrassment when Jenna stifled a laugh. No, silly, this is just about spells and stuff. It's harmless. We need a third to make a circle. Then Jenna became somber for a moment before explaining. My mom is sick with cancer, and we're trying to use some of nature's magic to help her. I mean, look around. This place has something powerful, and it has its own pulse. Can you feel it? She grabbed Kat's clammy hand in hers and held her in an intense gaze, then pulled her onto the slab of stone with a white chalk star painted on it. Winnie slinked around to her left side and slipped her hand into Kat's while hastily grabbing Jenna's free hand. The three of them formed a circle. Welcome, Katerina, Winnie said, and the echo bounced off the bluffs. Kat was pleased with herself for sticking around, but realized she really did have to go home, even if her new friends wanted her to stay. You guys, this has been super fun, and I'm looking forward to playing with you here, but I do have to go. My mom's going to be worried. Jenna burst out laughing and was incredulous. Did you just say playing? You have a lot to learn. We are not playing at anything. Winnie, can you lend our new recruit the red candle and the white candle? She referred to the worn paperback. With that, she turned on her heel and moved through the vine curtain into the cave, and Kat and Winnie followed. Winnie hastily stuffed the book back into Jenna's bag. The vote of no confidence wasn't lost on Kat. The entire way home, Winnie and Jenna talked excitedly about the circle. They rambled about calling the elements and starting fires during the full moon. Kat was too worried about what her mom was going to say to pay much attention. Lost in her own thoughts, she would nod and say, uh-huh, if there was an awkward pause. The inky hue of dusk bled across the sky as they made it to the edge of the wood and stealthily moved through the cornfield back to their quiet lane. The street lamp was on, a shining reminder that Kat was late. As the perfect white houses, all in a row, started to make their appearance, she wondered what she was going to tell her mother as they crept ever closer to home. If Dad were here, it wouldn't be such a problem. He was always a little more lax than Mom. Kat knew her mother meant well, but that didn't make it any less annoying. The girls stopped briefly at Kat's gate. We'll see you tomorrow if you can still come out. Good night, kitty cat, Jenna called over her shoulder. Then the two linked arms and trotted off together to Jenna's house. She watched them disappear into the darkened street. Jenna lived at the very first house on Iris Lane, the corner lot with the shrubs as a fence. Kat didn't know where Winnie lived, but she imagined it wasn't too far. She sighed bitterly and slammed the gate. They obviously didn't want to stick around long enough to help her deal with her overbearing mother. The porch light was on, but the rocker her mother normally occupied was empty. As she entered the front door, the warm smell of supper lingered, though she could tell it had been finished for quite some time. Kat, is that you? Her mother called from the kitchen. I was just about to pack yours away. I might still. You are very late. Where have you been? Delia Stonehart's shrill voice scolded. Kat leaned in the doorway and watched her mom plop her plate into the microwave. Sorry, I just lost track of time. Jenna took me to this really cool fort in the woods. The lie rolled so easily off her tongue she could barely believe it. Honestly, there wasn't a reason to tell her mother about their secret hangout. Delia would only freak out and never let her in those beautiful, serene woods ever again. Best just to keep quiet about her adventure. That night, before she climbed into bed, Kat opened her window to hear the crickets chirping. The summer breeze made her curtains float up, and the smell of late summer filled her room. The forest just down her block had seemed inaccessible, and she had often wondered about it. Now, she couldn't wait to get back. It was like the trees were calling to her, whispering they had a thrilling secret to tell. What had Jenna called the woods? She asked herself. Her tired mind searched for the words as she closed her eyes. Oh yeah, majestic. That was what she'd said. Today had been absolutely majestic. Drifting into unconsciousness, her mind wandered back to the fork in the path. Kat awoke to her mother banging on her door and the sunlight hitting her dead in the eye. Ugh, that's right. She'd fallen asleep with the window open and the shade up. Get up, Kat. It's well past 8 o'clock. We need to pick some of the cucumbers from the garden and tidy the house before your dad comes this weekend. Dad! She missed him so much. It had been hard times for the Stoneharts. They had lived downtown in a condo before moving to Warden. After almost 15 years with his company, Steve lost his job. He searched for work, but their savings ran out, and then he found a position as the warehouse manager for a local freight company here in Warden. The position only lasted a few months. He searched again and found another job back in the city, but moving there again was out of the question. Delia had told her that Warden would always be home now. She was thrilled about country life, and as a substitute teacher was hoping to find work in these network of small towns. Some months she'd had luck and others she didn't. The Stoneharts had moved into the quaint farmhouse because they could pay for it outright with the money they'd made from selling the condo. The recession was always being talked about on the news, and the uncertain times were stressful for a good many people. Kat was a city girl, and had tried to settle into small-town life, but it was hard to like anything about this place filled with hicks and clicks. The house was smaller than their condo, and there was nothing to do in town. It didn't have any of the amenities of the city. No cool hangouts, no chic restaurants or clubs that catered to teens. Both her parents loved their new place. Kat was ambivalent about it. She would have gone back to the city in a heartbeat, but her parents assured her that her father's job situation was only temporary. He was going to look for something closer to Warden when the economy improved. Until then, they just had to manage. Steve came home only a couple of times during the month for the weekend, and while in the city stayed in a studio apartment. It was putting a strain on her mom and dad. She could hear hushed fights over the phone and felt the tense, awkward moments between them when they were alone. Her dad being home brought mixed emotions. She missed him, but didn't miss the fighting. Kat resented Delia for not wanting to move back home. Warden wasn't home. This was not where she wanted to be. A creaky old house in a boring little town filled with people that didn't like her. Just thinking about the situation was enough to make her want to stay in bed forever. Since that couldn't happen, she decided to get up. Slowly, Kat wriggled out of her bed, grabbed her robe, and plodded down the stairs. Her room was a converted attic, and it was small, but very private. With each thump, she came closer to the main floor where she passed her parents', or really her mom's room. She swiftly went into the bathroom to take a shower. Kat could hear her mother coming, no doubt to nag her again, so she shut the door before her mother arrived to chirp at her. Kat, when you are done with your shower, we have to talk a little bit about last night. I'm not sure that I want you playing in the woods with Jenna all the time. I was really worried about you, you know, Delia lamented. She waited in vain for a reply, but was met with silence, so she continued. Just so you know, I almost went looking for you, but I didn't. I know you're trying to make friends here. Her voice softened as she trailed off. Kat didn't respond. She just turned the shower on full blast and pretended not to hear her. She dressed and begrudgingly came into the kitchen for breakfast. Her mother eyed her carefully over her morning coffee. Kat pretended not to notice and wolfed down her eggs. With time to plot and a full stomach, she broached the subject, confident she could turn the situation around. So you don't want me to hang out with Winnie and Jenna just because I was a little bit late? That's a harsh, Mom. She managed to bite her toast and roll her eyes at the same time. I didn't say that I don't want you hanging out with them. They can come here and you guys can... What? Play Barbies? Kat interrupted sarcastically. No. Well, What's wrong with Barbies? You used to love them. Kat stabbed the fork at the last bit of her eggs. Honey, I get your point. Look, I want you to realize they're a little older than you, and I'm having a hard time with that. Delia woefully replied. Mom, get real. This is 1994, not 1904. People are different. People of different ages hang out. Kat chided her. She twisted her hair between her fingers, displaying her obvious annoyance at Delia's overprotection. She knew her mom was fishing for information and on the right track. A typical teenager, Kat would rather die than let her know all that. She was determined not to let her mother talk her into ditching the only two girls that had shown any interest in friendship. There were only 203 students from 7th through 12th grade, and they were all in the same school together. Warden School was an old 3-story brick building. Here, what grade you were in and age differences weren't such a big deal. Mom, this is Warden. Everybody knows everybody. I really haven't had the chance to make many friends yet, Kat replied. You know, 'cause they all already know each other. I'm the outsider. The bitterness showed on her face, and Delia realized how hard the transition had been. Well, what about Amanda? Didn't you say that she was nice and she let you sit with her at lunch? Asked Delia, sputtering. Crossing her arms and frowning, Kat shot back. Yeah, Mom, she is nice, but I haven't seen her the whole summer. I tried calling her, but she hasn't called back, and she lives out on that farm, like 10 miles from here. Kat was tired of trying to convince her mom that having Winnie and Jenna as friends was a good thing. She sighed, exasperated. Mom, I promise I will let you know if they ask me to do something stupid. Can I please go now? Delia knew the battle was lost. She would rather know where Kat was than have her sneaking around. Can I see the fort? Delia asked cautiously. Wrong move. It only pushed Kat's buttons. Mom! No! Okay? It isn't far from here, and I can probably hear you call me if you want me to come home. Geez, I can't even do something as harmless as hang out in the woods. Delia furrowed her brow. I'm not so sure you're being harmless, she muttered under her breath. But then she caved. Okay. You can go, but don't make me regret this, Katerina. Thanks, Mom. She gave Delia a quick peck on the cheek before putting her dish in the sink. Slipping on her sneakers, she pushed through the screen door and down the porch steps. By the time she hit the gate, she was in a full sprint. Kat didn't know if Jen and Winnie would even be there, but she didn't care. She just wanted to go back to their secret hangout and explore it more for herself. The humid summer air clung to her, sending sweat trickling down the back of her neck. Perfect day to be in the woods surrounded by mosquitoes, she muttered to herself. The cornfield proved to be a little challenging. She tried to remember the exact rows Jenna had gone down, but ended up coming out about 100 feet too far from the path that led into the woods. Kat had to backtrack, navigating through the thick green stalks. It was spooky, and the hair stood up on the back of her neck. She paced her breathing and finally found the entrance. Once Kat was in the forest, she felt a calmness envelope her. She took a deep breath of the sweet, dank, woodsy air, and a wide smile erupted from her lips. She couldn't believe she'd waited all summer to come here. Why hadn't she gone by herself? Oh yeah, that's right. She wasn't allowed to. Kat rarely, if ever, disobeyed. She resigned herself to the fact that perhaps this had to change. A little independence wasn't a bad thing. Kat made her way down the path and slowed as it narrowed and broke into a fork, which led in 3 distinct directions, left, straight, and to the right. Left was the way they'd gone yesterday, and she knew it would lead to the bluffs. If she went straight, she would have to climb up a steep hill covered in sumac. Although there was a remnant of a path, she wasn't sure it really led to anything. Then there was right. The woods were brighter that way. The trees were spread farther apart, and tall grass was littered with wildflowers. Kat decided to go left, but vowed that she would explore the remaining paths later on. Just as it had been yesterday, the path leading to their hangout was long. It seemed much longer alone. The snapping of twigs and scurrying of little animals had started to creep her out. A big black spider scuttled down the bark of a tree next to her and almost made her turn back. It was an eerie sort of place here. Everything seemed more still. It was as if the woods were silently observing her. Then, out of nowhere, a hummingbird zipped past her. She jumped off the trail into the brush, completely startled. Ah! She let out a little scream, but the bird was gone as quickly as it had came. Veering back onto what she decided to call Bluff's trail, Kat picked up the pace. Finally, the enormous rock wall and the vine-covered entrance loomed before her. She pulled them aside and sprinted through the cave. When she reached the other side, she burst through it and exhaled in relief. The shrine was even more magnificent today. Sunlight mingling with mist created an intoxicating landscape. Kat had decided to explore each rock around the slab. All of them were the same type of stone, but slightly different shapes, smooth and gray, with small markings on them. Her fingers traced the symbols, and she wondered what they meant. Kat stepped onto the center of the gray slab. The chalk drawings from yesterday had disappeared. She crossed to the other side and explored the bluffs while picking raspberries and snacking on them. That's peculiar, she said to herself, noticing there were little rock cup holders of some sort etched into the stone. Again, mysterious markings had been chiseled onto the bluffs. She ran her hand down the symbol she was looking at, and ever so briefly, an image appeared in her head of a woman with green eyes like her own. She drew her hand away, startled by the vision. "Boo!" Jenna said as she sneaked up from behind. She giggled when she saw Kat jump. "Ha! Gotcha!" "That wasn't funny, Jenna!" Then she erupted into giggles, letting the laughter smooth her frazzled nerves. Jenna sat down on one of the rocks to unload her backpack. "You were looking at the markings on the bluffs, right?" "This book has some of the same symbols. The one you are looking at means Feralt, or a druid word for priestess," she said as she fiddled with her bag to find the book Winnie had shown her yesterday. She pulled out the well-worn paperback and handed it to Kat. "Do you know what the cup holders are for?" asked Kat as she took the book from Jenna. "Cup holders? Oh, you mean the torch stands. At least that is what Winnie thinks they are. They used to put their torches in them so they didn't have to hold them when they were here making a circle at night," Jenna speculated. "You guys come out here at night?" Kat hesitated before adding, "I'm not sure my mom would let me." Jenna rolled her eyes. "So sneak out." She pulled a pack of cigarettes from her purse and seductively offered one to Kat. "Want to smoke?" "No, thanks," Kat insisted. Jenna shrugged her shoulders but didn't pressure her. "I gotta quit these," she said, exhaling. "My mom is sick because of them." She didn't say much else as she finished her smoke, so Kat flipped open the book and started paging through it. There were a number of spells with notes in the margins. Kat was skimming the page looking for anything unusual or gory, but they called for ordinary items, things like eggs, hair, salt, dirt. "So have you tried any of this?" Kat asked, holding up the book. "Yeah," Jenna replied, another plume of smoke exiting her nostrils. "We've lit the candles to the god and goddess. We've called the divine elements that correspond with the cardinal directions. Each represents elements of earth, air, fire, and water. Winnie and I tried a couple of protection spells, but so far they haven't worked." Winnie pushed through the vines, catching the tail end of the conversation. She rolled her eyes and sighed deeply. "They haven't worked because we didn't have a circle. I think now that we've got one, we will be a little bit more successful." She walked over and plucked the remaining cigarette out of Jenna's mouth and crushed it out with her foot. "This doesn't belong here, Jenna," she said sternly. It was obvious to Kat that Winnie was the dominant friend in their relationship. I know, okay? Damn, I won't do it again. Just chill." Winnie was a little cranky. Again? This should never happen here, Jenna. This is a sacred place. Her scowl turned to concern. You said you were going to quit. I can't stand to watch you do it. Jenna hung her head and nodded, but she didn't say anything back. She was a mellow person, and Winnie was quite high-strung. After their little scuffle, Winnie acknowledged Kat's presence. Oh, hey, Kat. So, how'd it go with your mom last night? Hope we didn't get you into too much trouble. Nah, she was just worried, but I smoothed things over, Kat replied, keeping a cool head. Winnie was pleased. Good. I'm glad to see you back here today. Then she turned to Jenna. Should we teach her to call the divine elements with us? Jenna nodded. Yeah, that's a good place to start. Stepping onto the middle of the slab, she produced chalk from her backpack and drew a circle with a star inside it. Then, using her compass, she marked the cardinal directions. She placed 4 white candles in each direction and put a large white candle in the center of the star. Pulling a small burlap bag filled with sea salt out of her bag, she sprinkled it around the perimeter of the slab. Winnie placed wildflowers on the northern point, and Jenna filled an ornate goblet with water. Upon seeing the curious look on Kat's face, she explained, I bought this at a Renaissance fair. It's called a chalice, and it represents the element of water. Then she lit a stick of incense from one of the candles and blew out the flame. A bit of white smoke encircled her, and she coughed a little. We want to call the elements to help us, so we're offering the chalice for water, the center candle for fire, the flowers for earth, and the incense for air. Winnie paused briefly. Really, we should be doing this at dusk, but this is just to show you. North corresponds to earth, east to air, south to fire, and west to water. We start facing true north, and then turn clockwise. Jenna chimed in. To close the circle, we start north and go counterclockwise, working backward. Get it? Kat was intrigued by this ritual. It certainly didn't match the preconceived notions she'd had about witchery. A rush of excitement filled her, and questions came flying from her mouth. So, what do we say, and what does this do? Winnie opened her book to a page that had a corner folded. You could tell that she'd flipped to it many times before. Winnie leaned in to show her the spell. These are the incantations that we've been using. You don't need to say it now, but just listen to us. Jenna jumped in to answer her other question. We call the divine elements because they're like guardians. They watch over us and guide us. Kat nodded at Winnie and Jenna. Oh, okay. So when we do a spell, they keep us on the right track then? Exactly, said Jenna, a huge grin on her face. Jenna jumped in to answer her other question. We call the divine elements because they're like guardians. They watch over us and guide us. Kat nodded at Winnie and Jenna. Oh, okay, so when we do a spell, they keep us on the right track then? Exactly, said Jenna, a huge grin on her face. The 3 girls joined hands, standing around the chalk pentacle. Winnie and Jenna looked at each other, and then, with a silent communication, they began the chant together. Watchers of the North, with your power of growth and renewal, we invoke thee. Watchers of the East, with your power of stillness and power of wind, we invoke thee. Watchers of the South, with your power of flame and warmth, we invoke thee. Watchers of the West, with the powers of river, rain, and ocean, we invoke thee. Witness this rite and guide us. Blessed be. Kat had kept her eyes open during the ritual and had noticed when the girls called on the elements, all of them reacted. It was amazing. The wind appeared from nowhere and blew through their hair. The flames of the candles rose higher, flickering as if in an intricate tango. The rushing of water from the stream miles away echoed in their ears. The dank smell of the earth became more pronounced, and the crickets and tree frogs, which had been silent, sang intensely. Did you feel it? Did you feel it? Jenna exclaimed. There was a flurry of conversation as each of them described the emotion of the ritual. Kat piped up. I saw all of the elements react. Do you think we caused it? The wind whipping up and all that. I think we've finally done it. It has to be because you joined us, Cat. You're our third. You're the reason it's working this time, Winnie said in satisfaction. As far as Cat was concerned, Winnie was in competition with the Ice Queen, so she had to hide her shock when she wrapped her arms around her in a giant hug. Jenna flung herself on both of them, and the three girls embraced until it was awkward. Let's celebrate, said Jenna, pulling a canteen from her bag. Each girl took a sip from it. The sweet and sour taste rankled her nose. Cat hadn't expected to drink wine. Winnie and Jenna took several more swigs before Jenna offered her more. No, I don't really like the taste, she lied. Suit yourself, replied Jenna. We should save it anyway. It'll be a while before I can smuggle more. Mom doesn't drink when she's getting her treatments. After the high of invoking the elements and actually having something happen, the girls decided it was best to end their adventure. Winnie wanted to do more reading, and Jenna had to go work as a cashier at the local grocery store. It was almost time for lunch anyway. So they headed back together, Winnie always walking a few paces ahead, her nose stuck in the air. Hey, Jen, do you think I could borrow that book, The Red Candle and the White Candle? Cat asked as they neared the cornfield. Yeah, sure. You can have it for a while. I'm not going to be around much this weekend. I have to work and drive my mom to the hospital, she replied, her voice heavy with strain. The girls parted ways at Cat's gate. She could feel her mother's gaze upon her, hidden behind the lace curtain and peering out the window, as she bid her new friends goodbye. She breezed into the kitchen, overjoyed with the morning's events, ignoring her mother, who was slinking in the doorway, as she made herself a sandwich, humming a tune as she busied herself. Finally, Delia spoke. So you seem to be making friends? Her mother's voice was cautious and excited. Cat wished she could share what she'd just done with her. It was the single most important event of her life, other than getting her period. This was something she instinctively knew to keep to herself, like her mother would believe her anyway. Yeah, they're cool, and Jenna borrowed me a book to read. Cat didn't get into the details of the book and hoped her mother didn't pry too much. Oh, she did! How wonderful! Her mom sounded like a total geek. Cat knew she was happy for her and just trying to connect, but they struggled with each other so much these days. Ever merciful, she cheerily replied, Yeah, I think I'm going to eat some lunch and read a little in my room. Maybe I'll come help you in the garden after a couple of chapters, okay? Great. I wanted to let you know that Dad isn't coming up until tomorrow. I know you wanted to see him, but he's so... Delia trailed off. Busy. Too busy for us anyway, Cat finished for her mom. She shook her head in disgust and stomped up to her attic room. In the back of her mind, she knew getting pissy wasn't helping. Unfortunately, she didn't have the guts to prod her mother for answers, and she hated herself a little bit for it. It was much easier to be moody and self-indulgent. After all, she was missing him too. Throwing herself onto her bed and cramming pillows all around her, Cat finally cracked open the book she'd been coveting. Absorbed in the contents of rituals, magic, and folk tales, she looked up, realizing the sun was setting and her mother had left dinner outside her door. It was cold soup, but she slurped it up anyway before engrossing herself yet again. When her eyes grew tired and the room too dim to continue reading without a lamp, she slapped the book shut. Looking out the window from her cozy bed, Cat spied the darting form of a hummingbird. It departed from their willow to the forest. How peculiar. Had the light been playing tricks on her eyes? She could have sworn its chest was lit up like a lightning bug. Thanks for watching.